All right, let's just dive right into this. Have you ever caught yourself telling literally everyone what you're going to do? Making these massive grand announcements, but then a few months go by, you look around, and your actual results are still sitting firmly at zero? Yeah, if that hits a little too close to home, you're definitely in the right place. Welcome to today's Explainer. We are breaking down a really fascinating psychological trap that is actively keeping you from hitting your goals. We're going to explore the incredible power of silent ambition and look at exactly why you need to stop seeking applause for a future that hasn't even happened yet. So, let's get into it.
Seriously, think about it for a second. Have you ever noticed how undeniably good it feels to announce a huge new goal? You decide, hey, I'm going to write a book, or I'm starting a business, or I'm getting into the absolute best shape of my life. You throw up a post about it, you tell your friends over dinner, and bam, immediately you get this huge rush of excitement. People are cheering you on, the likes are rolling in, they're telling you how proud they are, you're soaking up all this early applause and validation before you've literally even lifted a single finger to start the actual work.
Well, here is the cold, hard truth. That amazing feeling? It's a total trap. When we seek out that premature applause, we are basically robbing ourselves. See, our brains are incredibly complex, but they're also kind of easily tricked. There are psychology studies, like the famous ones by Peter Gollwitzer on identity goals, that show when you get social validation just from announcing your plans, your brain processes it almost exactly as if you had actually accomplished the thing. You get the full reward without doing an ounce of the work. And because you've already gotten that emotional payoff, it completely drains you of the mental energy and the hunger that you absolutely need for the grueling execution phase. And this brings us to a really crucial divide: rhetoric versus results. Think about the people in your life, or even historical figures that you truly, deeply respect. I guarantee it's almost never because of what they tweeted they were going to do, right? We don't build statues for people who posted a really great day one selfie on Instagram. We respect people entirely because of what they actually delivered. At the end of the day, your legacy is defined by your actions, not your potential, and definitely not your announcements. In a world where everyone is just constantly screaming for attention, we kind of forget this simple fact. Your actions will always speak way louder than your words ever could. Psychologists actually have a name for this. They call it the announcement trap. It's that false dopamine hit you get from sharing goals, which creates the complete illusion of progress without demanding any actual effort. This is the underlying science of why we get stuck. Dopamine is literally the molecule of motivation. You need it to push through hard, annoying tasks. But when you leak your dopamine by talking constantly about your plans, you're just creating an illusion. You feel highly productive, but nothing has actually been produced. When you learn to just silence your plans, you bottle that energy up. You save all that vital mental fuel for when you're actually going to need it.
So what does it actually look like when the applause stops and the cameras are off? Spoiler alert, it's not glamorous. The real secret to actually moving the needle is doing things you absolutely hate and figuring out how to do them as if you love them. It's about making yourself consistently uncomfortable. It's working quietly in the trenches. Look, while everyone else is super busy curating their ambitious posts online and just waiting for the dopamine hits to roll in, the real architects of success are offline. They're grinding in the shadows, doing the unsexy, monotonous work that nobody is ever going to clap for.
I know it sounds totally counterintuitive, but consistent discomfort creates an easy life. Think about it. Most of us are biologically wired to seek comfort and run far away from pain. But learning to intentionally attack the tasks that you hate, to actually lean into that friction every single day, is the only real pathway to long-term ease. If you take the easy road right now, by just talking about your goals and avoiding the heavy lifting, your life becomes incredibly difficult later on. But if you embrace the discomfort of silent, relentless execution today, you're building the foundation for a much easier, much more expansive life down the road. And here's a harsh truth about success that you're going to have to accept. There's a saying, lucky is just what the weak say to the strong people who works their asses off to win. When you put your head down and work in silence, a really funny thing happens. People don't see the late nights. They don't see the failures, the insane stress, or the hundreds of hours of mind-numbing tasks. They only see the sudden, explosive end result. And because they miss the brutal process, they'll inevitably just call you lucky. But you and I know the real deal. Lucky is just a myth designed to comfort people who refuse to execute. Good things only come to the people who relentlessly and quietly put in the work. Let's map out the reality of this execution. This is basically the life cycle of any worthwhile goal. Step one is always the easy part, right? The excitement of the idea. But man, very quickly you hit step two, exhaustion. This is where your mind is literally screaming at you to quit. It's the absolute danger zone. This is exactly where the people who announce their goals abandon them, because they already got their dopamine. But if you're working in silence, you push through to step 3, the sunk cost realization. That's when you realize you've put way too much blood, sweat, and tears into this to stop now. And if you can break through that psychological wall, you finally hit step 4, the ultimate breakthrough. Smack in the middle of that life cycle is a really critical make-or-break moment. You are absolutely going to have days where you are genuinely, down to your very core, exhausted. Your brain is going to rationalize every possible excuse to just stop. You're going to want to quit. But in those dark, lonely moments, you have to look yourself in the mirror and remind yourself of one simple, undeniable fact. You haven't reached the goal yet. You have already invested way too much time, sacrificed way too much comfort, and lost way too much sleep to just walk away with absolutely nothing to show for it.
So practically speaking, how do we actually survive that breaking point? Well, first, stop complaining about how hard it is. Complaining is literally just another way of leaking out your vital energy. Second, stay completely silent. Keep your struggles and your massive efforts contained entirely within yourself. Third, stay hyper-focused on just the next immediate step. Don't stare up at the massive summit, just look at the dirt right in front of your feet. And finally, my personal favorite, demand a reward for your pain. If you're going to suffer through the friction of hard work anyway, make absolutely sure you endure long enough to get the return on your investment. Please, do not suffer for nothing.
When it feels like the sheer weight of your goal is literally trying to break you in half, remember this: the hardest battles are reserved for the strongest soldiers. That intense, crushing pressure you feel during the silent execution phase, it isn't there to destroy you, it's there to forge you. It's a well-known psychological phenomenon that things feel the absolute most difficult, the most chaotic, right before you cross over to an entirely new level of capability. So if you're feeling incredibly discouraged right now, recognize it for what it is. It's a signal that your breakthrough is right around the corner. Don't let it stop you now.
And that brings us to our final, biggest takeaway for today. Stop announcing and start executing. I have a challenge for you today. Take all that energy you spend curating your image, constantly talking about your big plans, and seeking out that premature validation, and channel it exclusively into action. Close your mouth, get to work, and let your massive, undeniable success be the absolute only noise you make. Just imagine what you could actually accomplish if you simply stopped talking about it. Well, let's find out. Let's get to work.